So BuzzFeed has this list of apparently the best fantasy books ever written. I've given it a brief glance over, and I thought there was actually some really good picks on this list and some not so great picks. I'm going to go ahead and just give my opinion. Obviously, I've not read nearly everything on this list, but I'm just going to go over what I think belongs, what I think doesn't. It's just fun because I haven't finished a book, and honestly, I just kind of do something a little different for my channel. So getting into it, starting with number 42, The Once and Future King by T.H. White. Good pick. I've read parts of it. I've never read the whole thing. I need to get into it and reread it, but this is definitely considered an absolute classic and a foundation for the genre. So having it in your top 40 is pretty good. I skipped to 42 because 51 through 42 I had never read. So moving on, I've never read any of that. Okay, so this is where I think the first bad pick comes in. Well, okay, the inheritance cycle on its own merit is not bad. That being said, it stole so much from so many other fantasy books so directly. I have an issue putting it on this list just for lack of originality. If you're going to have a top 50 of all time, consider originality to be very, very, very important. Redwall, I would put way, way higher on this list for the exact opposite reasons I would put Inheritance Cycle lower. Redwall is incredibly original and fun, and while it's not exactly the most sophisticated thing on the planet, I think it accomplished exactly what it set out to do pretty much as well as it could. I would put Redwall in my top 20, certainly higher than 30. Moving on, I've never read that. Okay, I'm amazed I've never reviewed, summarized, or talked about anything from R.A. Salvatore before. I certainly need to do that, and the Dark Elf trilogy is a great place to start. I've read them all before. It's actually one of the first books I ever read in fantasy was a lot of R.A. Salvatore stuff, and I really need to get into it. I would put them way, way higher on my list as well. Then again, I haven't read a whole bunch of the stuff on this list, so maybe there's more stuff actually that needs to fill that in. Merlin Quest, pretty good. Some of this stuff is just, they're safe picks, it feels like, for BuzzFeed. The Black Company, I read this because a lot of people really wanted me to on my channel, and I wasn't a huge fan. I respect how much it stands out from a lot of the crowd, but me personally, I just couldn't get into it very much. So I just didn't want to give it a review because I didn't have a whole lot to say. It was good at a lot of things, not my personal preference or taste. So that's pretty much my review of the Black Company right there. It just didn't fit my exact preferences. Malazan, it's great. You want to see my review on Malazan, go check it out. I certainly believe it's in a good spot on this list. Wheel of Time. I wonder what Daniel thinks Wheel of Time should be on this list. Obviously, I would have it monstrously higher. And if you read the little paragraph this person has written, I can't really disagree with what they're saying. It has a great start and a great finish, and the middle can be painful. I don't fault the person for saying that at all, and I even quite a bit agree in a lot of ways. So while I do love this series, and I personally would put it much higher, I get why it's not substantially higher on the list. I've never read Outlander. I've never read The Steel Remains, Prince of Thorns, none of it. I've never read Raven's Shadow. I'm just proving how unqualified I am to you guys right now. Nope. Oh, okay. Chronicles of Narnia. I would put way, 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 way lower. Not a Chronicles of Narnia fan for many reasons. I get why some people really care about it, especially with how much it impacts a lot of people's childhoods. I get it. Trust me, I really do. But in terms of just my own personal preference, I don't really like Chronicles of Narnia that much. But I don't know. I feel like a lot of people, it's either really love it or really hate it with the Chronicles of Narnia. Like, people are really, really passionate about it. So I don't know. I purposely didn't look at the top 10 before I just immediately scrolled all the way to the bottom. So hopefully there'll be some real surprise in there. I've heard great things about the Sword of Truth, and I need to get into that. Harry Potter. I think it's foolish to have Harry Potter anywhere outside of the top 10. People who hate on Harry Potter because it's cool, they're not doing themselves any credit in terms of real, you know, credibility when it comes to how you look at fantasy books in terms of world building and character and unbelievably interesting just magic systems. Harry Potter is almost unparalleled. I would put it in my top 10 for sure. I think the fact that BuzzFeed doesn't have it in their top 10 is a little surprising, because you think they'd really want to appeal to that Harry Potter crowd. It's more in their demographic because Harry Potter is so mainstream. I think that's why a lot of people in fantasy do hate on Harry Potter. It is incredibly mainstream for fantasy, arguably more mainstream than Game of Thrones for fantasy, which is not a bad thing. And you shouldn't just hate something because it's mainstream, although I do get that feeling. I've heard great things, never read it. Okay, Gentlemen Bastards. I actually respected this list a lot more when I saw this right outside the top 10. I think the Gentlemen Bastards is so original, so unique, a real gem in the fantasy genre. It's so fun to follow the bad guys, and they're not evil people, but to follow the real bad guys. If you have not read the Gentlemen Bastards, do it. Go check out my reviews if you want my thorough thoughts on them. But I think especially the first book, The Lies of Locke, just elevated the entire fantasy genre in a lot of ways and helped bring a refresh to it. And we know how I feel about Mistborn. I don't know if I'd put Mistborn this high. It feels more like a 17 or 18 for me on my list, but I actually kind of respect BuzzFeed having this high up as well. I think Mistborn is fantastic, and I love that it is on this place on this list. If it wasn't for Era 2, it might be this high for me, but Era 1 certainly deserves to be in the 12 spot. Riddlemass, never read it. I need to get on that. Demon Cycle, never read. Sword Up, never read that. Okay, wow, I'm looking bad. The First Law by Joe Abercrombie. I've never read it. Let me know of the stuff I'm saying I haven't read, what I should read. Discworld is going to be coming very soon from me in terms of reviews. Certainly by the end of the summer, I hope to burn through quite a bit of Discworld by Terry Pratchett. That'll be my Terry Pratchett reviews. His Dark Materials, again, something that for some reason the fantasy community has started getting hated on, and I don't understand why. It is a wonderful series of books and is probably one of the first books that really made me like tear up, because I read it when I was really young, and it was one of the first times I read a book that didn't have the happiest ending ever. So I certainly took the gut punch, and I still upset with Hollywood with how bad their film adaptation of His Dark Materials was. The Golden Compass especially deserves much more love than it got. If you've not read His Dark Materials series, I highly recommend you do. The demons dynamic and the social structures and constructs are so well done. The worlds are built so well. I can't recommend them enough. And this is fantastic. I love seeing Lightbringer so high up. I expected those reviews of mine to get more views because I thought it was a very popular series, but apparently it's not as big as I thought. I thought Lightbringer was on the same level as, I would say, Stormlight, but it's not apparently in terms of fan devotion. So I want more people to check out the Lightbringer series. Brent Weeks has crafted probably some of the most consistently amazingly well done characters I've ever seen in a fantasy series. Every character is dripping with personality. Every character has a fleshed out motivation, and no one feels just pure evil or pure good. They just feel like a real person. The covers are dog for the series, but the actual content is, I would say it's, number 5 is an earned place. I would maybe even put it a little higher in terms of just top 10 fantasy for me. Lightbringer is awesome. Lord of the Rings, in my opinion, this should be number 1. The fact that it's not is ridiculous, but that's just me. I'm a big classic whore. Game of Thrones, as I've said before, not my cup of tea, but I agree with it being this high on the list for what it has done for helping fantasy really come into mainstream culture more, and absolutely it is technically incredibly well written, and you can sing praises for it all day long. I do really, really enjoy George R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones in the aspect that it is so high quality compared to a lot of stuff out there in the fantasy. And I actually am giving it a reread, and I'm going to reevaluate my opinions on Game of Thrones and put out some reviews of them soon, book by book. Or sorry, Song of Ice and Fire, not Game of Thrones. I should say that. Stormlight. I'm very surprised to see them put that above Game of Thrones or Song of Ice and Fire. That is interesting. You think BuzzFeed would go with just the mainstream kind of appeal, but they're definitely not with this list. I'm a big fan of them putting Stormlight so high. Would I put it this high? If you were just saying like in terms of best book, yes. But in terms of best fantasy, I would say there are books that do fantasy better than Stormlight does. But in terms of quality of just book, I think Stormlight is overall better. That doesn't make sense. It's because it's a dumb thing to say. But I'm a big fan of seeing Stormlight so high on the list. And son of a... Obviously, I'm not a fan of seeing this at number 1. I think that is stupid and absurd. Oh, God, I'm so unhappy. That is my review of BuzzFeed's review of the 51 best fantasy books of all time. I hope you guys enjoyed my little BS video because I am tired and don't feel like doing something more comprehensive today because it's been a long day. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like and subscribe. Support the channel any way you can. I appreciate it, especially sharing. And have a great weekend. Go do some stuff you'll regret. Peace.